Welcome back. John Merrow, educational correspondent at the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer.
What an amazing video. What a way to start off a conversation about teaching and sort of technology as the enemy of education, even as it may be the friend of learning. But may I ask a question based on what, Sergey's observation about teaching? Would you raise your hand if you are a former teacher? Whoa. All right, now would you raise your hand if you are now a classroom teacher? Anybody look around? That's 4. That's astounding. And the world, the world is full of former teachers. And maybe, Sergey's point is a valid one. If it's not a profession, it's a profession that apparently has driven out an awful lot of us. I too, I'm a recovering teacher. This is an amazing group. I'm going to ask them to come up. I want to just say a word about each of them and then ask them to come up and we'll just go at it. And we also would like to, again, I think the challenge is to move the ball forward based on what we've seen, what we've learned. But I've got 5 remarkable people here. Marshall Smith, his friends call him Mike, but he was my thesis advisor in graduate school, so I call him Dr. Smith. But he's a senior counselor at the U.S. Department of Education. He's been there and done that and just about everything. It's too long a list to go through. He did tell me he has 4 things he wants to tell the audience. He told me that if I did not ask him 4 questions, he would revoke my degree. And so that's one thing that will happen today. I will ask Mike 4 questions. Ellen Moir is the executive director. Come on up. Come on up. Esther, I want you down here, because you're wired and they're worried about feedback. And the rest of you guys, and I want the end. Come on up. Come on up. Thank you, thank you. Ellen Moir, in the red, executive director of the New Teacher Center, which is a brand new independent nonprofit. She has just left the security of a university. And she's been doing pioneering work on using technology tools like online mentoring to promote the skills of secondary school science and math teachers. The goal is sort of to change the role of teacher from sage on the stage to guide on the side. Closest to me is Esther Wojcicki, who is a chair of Creative Commons and a legendary teacher of journalism at Palo Alto High School. She is one of my 2 or 3 favorite teachers in 35 years of reporting. And she's a model in many ways for the future. I'm really going to put a lot of pressure on you, kid. Technology is one of her tools, and other is group projects. She has kids doing real work, newspapers, magazines, radio, television. And the only problem is she doesn't get paid more. She may work with 400 kids or whatever, but doesn't get paid for doing that. Next to Esther, Elyse Eidman-Aadahl. It's really Aadahl, but I think of Haydahl. You can't do that anymore. But so I'll call her Elyse. But you see, it's a joke, so you can't sue me, right? She's the director of national programs and site development of the National Writing Project, and I think actually she's the optimist in our group. I had a skeptic in my last group, or tried to label him one. I'm labeling her my optimist. The National Writing Project has done a community building, literacy programs with the aid of technology, series of letters to President Obama from kids, networked writing programs for teachers from preschool to college level. She is, like me, a former high school English teacher, but she also taught journalism. Tony Bryk, who is next to Dr. Smith, just finished his first year as president of the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. Until recently a professor at Stanford, Tony is best known for his work in Chicago with the Consortium on Chicago School Research and the Center for Urban School Improvement at the University of Chicago. I want this to be as open as possible. Let me ask you, each of you, just very, very quickly, and I'll cut you off if you go on too long. What have you learned so far? Let me start with you, Dr. Smith.
So I figure out how to turn on this.
Technology.
That's a button.
It may be on.
It is on. Good. What have I learned? Yeah, I've been both excited and disappointed by the last 18 hours or 20 hours or so. Excited because there's lots of energy and lots of good ideas and lots of interest in the issue from a wide variety of different kinds of people. A little bit unhappy about it because it's not addressing the issues. Haven't gotten down to teaching and learning. The issues haven't gotten down to how do you go to scale. The issues haven't gotten down to thinking about what kids actually need a lot. And just to start, I've got 4 challenges. I'm going to give you one very quick one.
What is one of your challenges?
Yeah, the first, thank you. Thank you for asking. It's actually been mentioned a number of times and touched on by an entire panel. And the challenge is that when an awful lot of low-income children come to school, they come with about 1/3 the working vocabulary of middle-income children. Think about that. 1/3 the working vocabulary. That is, when they're talking, they only use that 1/3 of words compared to all of the words that are used by middle-income kids. They're not going to catch up unless they get very, very special attention. They're not going to catch up at home because they're not getting the kinds of things at home or on the streets, and they're not going to get in the classroom if they get even the same kind of attention.
And technology can help?
And technology can help, but it has to help in a systematic way. We have to think about a strategy. My challenge to all of you thinking about issues like this, the innovators, the people in the schools, are to make a real revolution, to really focus on that issue. Without it, we're never gonna close the gaps.
Okay. Now, the question I asked, of course, was, what has he learned?
I did learn that.
You learned that you're disappointed. You learned that people are...
Exactly. I think we're not. I don't think we're focusing on the problems that exist, and I don't think we're proposing solutions to them. I think we instead tend too much to start with the technology and then see if it can work. I think that's for the schools. I think that's one way of going, but you've got to go the other way as well. You've got to pick the problem and then go after it as vigorously as you possibly can.
But pick a
using
problem,
the
you
technology.
can't. Okay. Elyse, what have you learned?
I think that in addition to learning again that there are reasons to be optimistic, so I'll take on your label, because so many good people are trying to crack a similar nut. I think I've learned that the dangers ahead are not much different than the dangers ahead in many other eras of school reform. I think that...
You don't think technology creates a paradigm shift, a sea change?
Oh, I think technology creates a paradigm shift and sea change for learning. I don't necessarily believe that it has or will, unless we think about a number of issues, create a paradigm shift for schooling and for school reform. And I think one of the challenges that we have that perhaps other people on this panel might speak to, there's a difference between the people who work on the system and the people who work in the system. And when we identify systemic problems, it seems logical to pursue systemic solutions. Our systemic solutions often create bigger and worse problems, including the problem of dampening innovation and growth at the local level. And we've spent several decades actually hardening the system that is part of keeping, in fact, innovations in learning from sprouting, both in schools and
But you knew
in
that coming in.
communities.
What have you learned?
So what I have learned is that we're not careful enough, even in this community, to distinguish what we mean by technology, what we mean by learning, and how we pursue reform. We're talking, I believe, as if we have a common vision, and I think that actually if we were to implement it, we would take some very different paths, and they may be across purposes.
Well, Mike is saying do one small thing, but do it big and do it well.
I think the doing of it well is an important question. What does it actually mean to do an innovation well? How does the doing and implementing of a practice, of a new area of practice or a type of reform, actually help build a learning system that can grow and can adapt, as opposed to reproducing a harder box that stops the next wave of reform? So doing well is, to me, an unanswered question so far.
Ellen, what have you learned? You can bounce off what these guys have said, of course.
Yeah, I guess I think they both are saying some important pieces. So I've been struck as I've sat here today. I've been very inspired and excited. And then I've been really depressed. And I keep kind of like, what is my problem? My problem is that every new teacher that I see working in America, I just about could say everyone, wants to be brilliant and wants to be innovative and wants to do the kinds of things that we're talking about doing. And most of them are given the sink or swim methodology to get in. And you saw how many of us are no longer teaching. We have a major, major gap in making sure that the most disadvantaged kids get the best education. And I am struck sitting here by this huge dichotomy between innovation and inspiration, and the reality on the other side that our kids in East Palo Alto and in other tough urban communities in America are given scripted, dry, deadly education, and that those teachers would like nothing more than to be innovative. So I think we have to really...
So you knew that coming in, though. You knew there were barriers.
I knew that, but I was...
Has anything happened here that makes you hopeful, or...
No, I'm not necessarily hopeful. I'm just struck by how exhilarating and exciting it is to see this pedagogy that we're talking about compared to the backdrop of what's happening.
So what you're saying is this is really just pie in the sky. I mean, this is just talk? Well, no.
A lot of good ideas.
Right.
And I'll hold back my judgment if it's just talk when I see what kind of actual implementation and scale we can get from these really great ideas that we've been talking about.
Tony?
On where you're pushing, John, I think the energy, commitment, kind of creative spirit in this room is really quite extraordinary. The fact that this event is happening in this valley, I think, is very important. The possibility, if we're really going to figure out how to do this union between the creative capacity that's being unleashed through technology and the real hard problems of transforming schooling, if that solution is going to get enjoined, it's going to happen because the people in this room actually decide to take on the problems of actually figuring out what the core problems are for improving schools, and then asking the questions where and how this technology could actually add value to solving those problems. And when you say that, it sounds like a really obvious idea. Yet, when you look at the history of prior efforts to bring technology to bear on schooling, it's not been an observation that has driven most of this work. It's been basically of the form, well, we've got this really wonderful idea, new tool, new capacity, and if you just used it, schools would be so much better places. And the question of the actual social practices of use, which I've heard some people begin to talk about in this conference, that's the problem we have to solve.
Well, now, Elyse has identified the major problem is the significant work ahead for educators, not in basic training related to hardware and software, but rather in providing deep and sustained professional development that will allow millions of educators to re-envision teaching for the 21st century. That's a quote from you. But Ellen has said the teachers there are ready, they're eager, they are full of hope. So there's clearly, there's a disconnect there. You give them the training, there's something that gets in the way that apparently has gotten in the way of all the previous technologies. I want to just trying to summarize what I'm hearing to lead up to Esther, who's going to tell us what she's learned. And you had a hand in putting this together, yes. So you better have learned a lot.
Well, yes, I did learn a lot, and I've been really inspired and excited by the previous panels and all the speakers. It's just been incredible.
Be specific, please. What have you learned? Be specific.
Well, let me tell you. One thing that I've learned is that you can really make a huge difference with technology. You know, before I thought so, well, perhaps it was just in my classroom and perhaps just at Palo Alto High School, and perhaps it was because of some of the programs that, you know, I personally have been involved in. But when I see what Jason did in PS, was it 339? I mean, that is amazing. And then when I see what has happened with the Harlem Children's Zone, I mean, it's amazing. We know what to do.
So it's a question of will.
Pardon?
Is it a question of will?
No, you know what it is? I can see it in some of the other schools that I'm trying to help. So I'm trying to help other schools adopt this journalism program that I've been very successful with. And it's really a fear of change on the part of a lot of administrators. They don't somehow see the power of, they don't see what we just saw here. They don't see the power of technology to really help the teachers. They just see it as almost like a separate subject. Right. You know, so now we're going to be studying math, and now we're studying, you know, science, and then we're going to study technology. Yeah. So, you know, it sounds like it's kind of crazy, but that's what's going on. Not only that, so I see the administration as a barrier. The administration, we need to educate principals. We need to educate superintendents. We need them to see the power of technology. We need to have them see Jason's school.
Earlier, Jim Steyer talked about this.
Oh, by the way, we need them to do it now. Speaking of Jim Steyer, now, urgent, because we have, as they said last night, every 26 seconds we have another dropout. And there's a correlation between the number of dropouts and our prison rates. So we pay for it, and the people that are in prison, they also pay for it. They're leading really miserable lives. And so we really need to do something now, even though I agree with Reed that, you know, it's a marathon. It's not just a sprint, but we really need to work on it right now. We can't wait around for another 5 years to study some more issues and then
let me be a skeptic here. You're talking about we need to do things now. Well, the kids are doing it now, right? So the kids go. Well, many kids are. When they're in school, it's likely that kind of technology is done to them, even in well-off schools, but especially in poor schools. But on their own, they're linking up with a kid in Mumbai. So they don't respect the walls of their classroom or their building or the borders of their country, but the teachers do. The teachers don't even migrate to the next classroom. So that's not a policy issue. Yeah. I mean, can't teachers do it?
No, it's a policy issue. Let me just tell you, across the country, most kids are in airplane mode. They come to school, strap yourself in, turn off all your electronic devices, and face forward. Yeah. That's it. Okay?
Don't let go till
it's ridiculous. So if you came to see my classes, you would see my students don't do any of those things. Yeah. I mean, they work in groups, they work in teams.
But see, a teacher, you don't respect that. You don't force them to strap down.
No, but most administrators think that's a good idea. That's the way, you saw the pictures over here. You saw what the classroom's supposed to look like. They're all supposed to sit there, face the teacher, the sage on the stage, and then follow instructions from the sage on the stage. Well, in my class of 60, I follow their instructions. Yeah. You can imagine what kind of chaos there is, but it works.
Elyse?
So for many years, I'll just speak from the perspective of the National Writing Project, one of the things that we work very hard to do is to surface important innovations and knowledge making among teachers so that those practices become visible and can be ported from one teacher to another. I would say in the early days, we were founded in 1974. In the early days, we would see innovations in teaching and learning practices that would spread through this network so that one of us would go from, I was in Baltimore, Maryland, I would show up in Chicago, I would show up in Arizona for a meeting, and I could see teacher practices that were very important ones built on and with students having spread through that network and taken root in a number of places. Now, I would say that I saw that happening pretty rapidly in a way that suggested the incredible opportunity that we are wasting by not leveraging and treating our very best educators, be they teachers in schools or out-of-school settings, I would say as well, as engines of innovation in the practices that leverage whatever the learning opportunities are, and they're different today than '74. Now, that is being made, that knowledge is being made in practice and can be shared.
Why was it happening?
But-
Were there
well,
incentives? Go ahead.
So let me say, that was '74 through the '80s. I would say that in the last 10 years, 15 years, it has been actually harder to do that. And I think that the reason it's been harder to do that is something that we have to look at, because teachers are not actually less innovative, I don't think. I don't think they're less committed to kids, and it's certainly the case a teacher in a room with stultifying education is as miserable as those students are. Nobody wants to have a room that is dead and devoid of life. People want joy. They want to actually be able to pursue important learning.
So are there just
that
not,
desires there
are there
for
just
teachers.
not enough incentives for teachers to go do the kind
I'll
of stuff?
say the incentives, and we heard a lot about incentives, about carrots and sticks. And certainly I would not want to say that there's a teacher anywhere who shouldn't make more money for performance. But I don't think that's actually the incentive. I don't think teachers are going to work harder to work with their kids to make learning happen simply based on earning more money. Their commitment to their subject area, to their content, to doing important work, to being part of a team that includes their students to do something significant. I'll tell, and then I don't want to hog the panel here, but there's a story I want to tell that started in my mind last night. We saw that amazing film, and I was one of the people, probably a lot of you, that didn't have a dry eye as we were watching the lottery go, right? And of course, I found myself hoping that this kid who was going to be the center of this film was going to get in the Seed Academy. And I think the Seed Academy is great. And it was purchased at the cost, that emotional moment for me was purchased at the cost of dramatizing Sousa as a wasteland. Right. Now, I would say one of the most amazing teachers I know is a middle school teacher at Sousa. And what this teacher did, just to give one example, and she happened to be a technology teacher, one of the things that she did at one point with a group of students as they were going to destroy the building, Sousa is a building, she worked with them over a semester to research the role that Sousa played in the Brown versus Board of Education suit. It was a huge part of that. They researched it, they built websites, they petitioned to get it on the historic record so that it would be preserved. They worked with architects to imagine what they could do if they could redo their wing. They pursued grant money to get internet access, better broadband so they could do this work. Amazing stuff. It won awards, and it happened in Sousa. Now, she's not in Sousa anymore. Part of the reason that she's not there is that the structures of school improvement did not reward her administrators for allowing risk. Yeah. It rewarded them instead for enforcing for all the teachers that they do test prep related directly. And as somebody said before, you turn off the machines to do test prep. Our tests are not good enough to teach to. And as long as those are the things that the rewards, the incentives are built on, as long as we substitute this kind of performance on tests that actually do not capture important work and reward that, we drive teachers like this one out of the building.
So that would suggest to me that we actually have the wrong people in this audience. We should have principals and school superintendents who should be seeing what this stuff does. Mike, let me call on you.
No, I want to...
Second time.
Oh, all right. I want to disagree a little bit. I mean, I don't think we can have a nation of 3 million extraordinary teachers. I think we can maybe have 100,000, 150,000. But it's just like any bell curve in any profession. You're going to have wonderful ones. You're going to have a lot of folks in the middle, and you're going to have some people who aren't cutting it well. I think you have to approach the problems in a different way. It's just why I focused on that vocabulary. We've known about this problem for years. we're not focusing on it. We've got to start focusing on it, or these kids will fail. We focus on another problem.
But wait a minute, but the answer in that vocabulary is not just getting a whole lot of terrific vocabulary teachers. You're saying technology.
Right.
Is the
You
way.
use technology in all sorts of, at home, at school, but you do it in a somewhat coordinated way so that the people there are half a dozen people in this room at least who are working on issues around vocabulary and comprehension and so on. Are they talking together? Is the innovation, does it add up to something greater than the sum of the parts? And that's the problem we've got, or it's one of the major problems we've got. Let me take one other one. We talk about how we need to address this issue of math and science teachers. I mean, I must have heard it 1,000 times. We have mechanisms now. We have courseware. I don't mean MIT's CopenCourseware, but although that's one example, but we have courses that are actually knock your socks off courses. And many of them are open, so they're on the internet. Kids are taking them all the time right now. There was a comment about in half the time, twice the gains or whatever. We did a study in Carnegie Mellon, freshmen, so it's close to high schools, in statistics. And basically, a random assignment of kids to the class. Half the class was taking technology only, and half the class was taking the lecture. But the group that took the technology only had half the time, right? They had to do it in half the semester. They came out better. They did just as well on future courses. I mean, there is no reason that we have to stick. I mean, it says a whole bunch of different things. It says one thing, that technology can really do quite extraordinary things. And incidentally, the person teaching the class was the same person who designed the course, the same subject matter person who designed the course. So this wasn't putting up somebody who wasn't a first-rate teacher and statistician against the computer. We have a recent study out of it's called a meta-analysis. They looked at 1,000 studies. They came up with 50 that they liked, and they compared taking technology only, taking technology plus a teacher helping against the teacher only. And the order came out: technology plus the teacher helping, technology, and then the teacher only. Everything statistically significant. We have courses now that these same courses could teach the teachers, and as well as the kids in areas like AP and others. The curve is, Clay Christensen talks about this curve of innovation, and the curve of innovation about the addition of numbers of courses. They're going to be taught online to high school students. He thinks we're just entering that kind of an angle of inflection in this curve of innovation. It's a logarithmic curve, so it's just going to climb right up on it if it really works.
It's a very different role of teacher then. It's not sage or guide. It really is.
Well, there's a guide part. There's a coach part.
Yeah.
It's very much like being a coach. I think.
Were any of you struck last night when in the panel last night, Ram talked about getting the videos of the very best calculus teachers and having those be available in high school. And so that students and teachers could learn from them. And Joel Klein went by saying what we need to do is pay STEM teachers twice as much money. I mean, as if they were not in part of the same conversation.
The issue about paying people more, there's the question of fairness to teachers. Putting that question aside, the role of fiscal incentives would start with an analysis of the problem that you don't think people are working hard enough. And therefore, the fiscal incentives are to get them to work harder on what you think are the right things. My own experience, 30 years working in Chicago in some very disadvantaged contexts, that most of those people are working hard every day. There are some who don't belong in classrooms. And the fact that we allow them to stay in classrooms is a great civic affront that simply has to be solved. But that's only a small part of the problem. Most of those people are working hard every day, and they just don't know how to be more productive at what they're doing. This is not, and so showing them a video, it's like, I could show you a video of Tiger Woods hitting the golf ball, and then I say to you, go out now and hit it 350 yards. Do you think you can do that? It would be the same thing of showing someone a video of just a superbly executed calculus lesson, or even for that matter, a video of what Esther does. There's the question of the knowledge of, and then there's the question of how we build robust systems so that many people can know how to do this.
See,
This is a central part. This is also a part where technology could actually conceivably help us.
I would just say that the challenge would be to change the thinking. I mean, I heard Secretary Duncan and last night Undersecretary Kenter talk about needing to replace 1.2 million teachers. Why? Why do we need 1.2? Why? Maybe we only need 800,000. I mean, my wife, who's a school principal, says, you know, you can pay good teachers a lot, or you can pay a lot of teachers. And that might be an interesting way to think about, because as Sergey said, there could be a case where one teacher could be teaching 400,000 or whatever, some number, but you would have to change the way you think about it. If you just automatically think, well, we got a pipeline, let's keep the same number coming through, let's just give them better bells and whistles, nothing will change.
I just wanted to also add into this piece on preparing the next generation of math and science teachers, but preparing teachers in general for a second. As I've been listening over the last 24 hours, I've been thinking a lot about the comments that were made yesterday around getting rid of teacher education, or the problems with teacher education not being very, having an impact. And I keep asking myself, what is it that teachers need to know and be able to do? And how do we organize their learning to get the kind of outcomes and engagement that we're talking about that we want for our students? And I think that we're training teachers in ways that are clearly not getting us the kind of results. So when we just look at the innovations that we've shared today, new teachers don't need a course in a teacher education program on technology. If they're going to be taking courses in universities, they need every course that they're learning to be engaging in the kind of inquiry and using technology as a day in and day out habit of mind. And so I want to talk about this for one more second, because I think getting the habits of using technology. Now, I'm of the generation that could be saying, well, you know, it's not for me, I'm not ready. But I've had to teach myself how to use my iPhone, how to use the kind of technology, how to get on these Google Docs, how to be with it in an age when you have to be using technology. And
at the new teacher center, do you find all those people coming in, you're starting from square one?
No, well, I find that new teachers coming in use technology, but they don't know how to use technology to teach kids. They don't know how to embed technology in their lessons. They know how to use it on Facebook and all the different things that they do. But we've never really taught teachers how to embed technology into the day-to-day lessons, and that's a missing piece.
So let me tell you why. It's because when they go to the schools of ed, they teach the old way. They don't model the way that we should be teaching in the classroom. So then they expect those teachers who have been taught by the sage on the stage to go into the classroom and then integrate technology when they haven't had any experience themselves.
I mean, let me lecture you on how to use technology?
Yeah, teachers don't need lectures. They need to, you learn by doing. So they should be doing that in the schools of ed. And the classes are not organized that way. There are some schools of ed that are doing it. I don't want to say everybody isn't. But I see teachers coming in, exactly what Ellen said, brand new, wonderful teachers who have zero idea how to integrate technology into the classroom. And so it's not an age factor. And they all know how to use Facebook or MySpace or all those things, but they can't use it in the classroom. And I have done teacher training at Palo on how to use Google Docs in the classroom. I use it in all my programs. And I have to repeat over and over again because they haven't used that kind of stuff. They use it themselves for their own email or whatever they use.
But what do you find? Do you find that they want to?
They all want to do it, but they have no experience. I don't know how many of you have used Google Docs, but I've done a lot of teacher training, and the most effective way to do the teacher training is to sit everybody together and actually have them do it. So they all exchange, they all practice exactly what the students should be doing. And at the end of 2 hours, then they can do it. But if
do they do it then in their own time?
They do it. They do it. I had to, but you know, originally they had me doing like a little staff development, you know, before school for 10 minutes. It's like, oh, could you please show all the teachers how to do this? Well, it's kind of like showing them how to ice skate, and then, okay, could you all go out and ice skate? It doesn't work. So they actually have to do it.
So it's real work.
Well,
it's real
yeah,
work.
but all the schools of ed should incorporate these they should model what they think teachers should be doing in the classroom.
Yeah. I want to turn to Tony and then to Elyse. Yeah.
Well, and then thinking about how to actually make this happen in the classroom. Classrooms are extremely complicated environments. Just right, in traditional classroom, teacher, 20 to 30 children, you're responsible for 30 lives. You're responsible for moving an increasingly externally articulated goals agenda that you got to accomplish, and you got a very finite amount of time in which to make this happen. This is a highly constrained environment where lots of things have to happen simultaneously. In principle, the technology can really change the way we do that work, but it is also a fundamental transformation in the way the work gets carried out. And really to exploit this possibility of something other than the egg crate structure of classrooms. You know, I want to point to the work that Joel Rose is doing, that Joel Klein mentioned. You know, they're working on 6th grade mathematics and trying to break down the box. And that is really hard, sustained design, engineering, development work to try to figure out a very different way for instruction to occur, much more individual work that students are doing, really using teachers' time and for only the parts of this that teachers can do. But that's not easy for any one individual to figure out on their own.
And do you have confidence that, say, Joel and his colleagues figure it out, that the world will be the path to his door and start doing it?
Well, if I keep talking about his work in audiences like this, I sure hope so.
No, I'm for real. Are the incentives strong enough for for 6th grades everywhere to start doing it?
I think the K-12 environment has changed. And I think actually in this regard, No Child Left Behind has actually been a constructive force. As I've been with the Aspen Urban Superintendent's Program, let me finish, for 8 years.
Before you start booing, let him finish.
But the conversation in those meetings have changed. Those superintendents are really talking about how to make their systems work differently, and they're really working on learning from each other. And when they hear about an initiative like that, I can tell you they're going to send, when they go back that next Monday, they're going to send somebody out to New York to figure out what's Joel Klein doing on X. That wasn't the nature of the conversations going on in those meetings when they started 8 years ago.
So it's at the superintendent level, because Elyse was talking about how teachers did it. Did you want to comment? If you do, or send it to Mike.
Yeah. I think that what was said here about teacher prep also relates to in-service, and I think that we've gotten a lot of mileage out of the digital native, digital divide concept. It's taught us something, but I think it's also potentially left us with a few erroneous ideas. And one is that if you're a digital native, it's already there for you. And you're pointing out, everyone's been pointing out that actually there are many things to learn. It's not automatic that engagement with digital tools means you use them in powerful and productive learning ways. And I think that the digital immigrant side suggests to us that there's something about especially older teachers that make them strangely resistant to change or unable to fathom how to create learning environments in which we could embed technology and new digital tools. And actually, I think people are on all sides of that issue when we put learning at the center. So one of the things that we can do for new teachers and also in professional development is let them actually experience the use of digital tools for their own learning. That's different than training. It's about identifying questions of practice that you want to pursue together. It's about learning how to create your personal learning networks. It's about yourself going through and learning what these tools can do for you in your own production. And from that, what do you theorize about a learning environment that makes anybody productive? And then that tells you something about your classroom. But if we instrumentalize teachers and we only see them as part of the equation that has to deliver something, we don't actually give them that learning space. And then we expect them to think in rapidly changing ways as new tools and environments get created every day about how to use them for learning.
That's pretty scary.
Let them use it for learning themselves. And then actually, I have seen at all ages and across the country, teachers deeply invested in building this work out because they see its power for learning.
Mike, I'd like to call on Dr. Smith for the 3rd time.
Right.
One more, too.
I recently visited Singapore and Hong Kong and a variety of other places. And
you're off to China on Monday.
Yeah. And one thing you see when you talk to the people in those schools is that they execute well, and they execute in the context of a learning environment. They test things out. A teacher has a great idea. She or he tries it out. It works or it doesn't work, or she corrects it. Maybe it works. Maybe she tries it 2 or 3 times. It begins to work. If it's worked, they have a conversation. It's tried by a few other teachers. It's tried by a couple of other schools. If it works, it continues to work well, they begin to move it out.
And do teachers get to watch each other teach?
And the teachers get to watch each other teach often, right? As often as they can make it.
Great.
So I want to tie this conversation back just a little bit to a possible policy that is coming on us, and that possible policy is common standards. Martha mentioned this a little bit. She didn't really talk about common standards. By common standards, I mean standards that would be adopted by all of the states or almost all of the states, so that you would have from state to state to state to state the same sets of standards. This would make it possible really to create assessment instruments, because states could work together. You could have much more interesting assessment instruments. You could have much more interesting curriculum, because it'd be enough work. The standards would be predictable state to state. It improves the market for innovation dramatically, because now you don't have to sell one product or one part of the product in California, another in Nevada, another in Washington, and so on.
You don't have to specify the process. You just say, here's where you got to get to.
And if it's working in California, it's got a much better chance of it working in some other place if it's the same set of standards, the same curriculum, roughly, and so on. Now, this has all sorts of potential downsides, and you know, if you put all your eggs in one basket, and that basket has a hole in the bottom, you've lost all your eggs. In this case, I think what you'd probably end up doing in the short run is to have a number of different sets of common standards. From each set of common standards, there may be multiple kinds of curriculum and multiple assessments, but not so many as you have now. Not 50 different sets of standards, assessments, and curricula.
Do you imagine that
this is a very different phenomenon, and it would help this kind of discussion, I think.
If you had the standards, that would free up teachers from those boxes of rigidity and so on and so forth. In other words, we don't care how you get there within.
Right. So there's there's a literature on creativity, and if you bound a problem, if you ask me how I'm going to get up, that desk back there without touching the floor, I can begin to solve it. I've got a way to solve it. If you just ask me to be creative, I'd sit here and
be creative.
Try to be creative.
Okay, I want to open this up. I want to.
Could I just
so if you've got questions, raise a hand. We'll get you a mic. Esther.
I just want a little skepticism here on
about standards.
Yeah. So
we were going to ask you to write them, but
no. They might be developing assessments that go along with the standards, and then the teachers would then be testing or be teaching to the new standards and the assessments that go along with those standards. And I would hope it wouldn't be like the No Child Left Behind consequences, the unintended side effect of No Child Left Behind.
Is your concern the standards would be too low?
No, it's just that if they're required and then they have a testing assessment that's right next to it, then teachers teach to that. And then if the school doesn't reach those standards, then they tend to get rid of their elective courses so that they can teach directly to the standards, which is
the lesson of No Child Left Behind.
Yeah, so I'd be a little concerned about
Mike, do you want to, or shall I just take a question?
No, I think it's a very legitimate concern, and everybody in this room ought to fight against that kind of solution or that approach to the problem. There are other approaches that are used by other countries where there's a lot of innovation going on among all that, and very high performance. So, there are models that we could emulate. If you go to Long Beach, California, you can see a really good, interesting model about a district that does terrific.
Let's take a question. Would you identify yourself, please?
Chris Walsh from the New Tech Network. This is a good conversation, and I think one of the more focused ones on some of the core issues that we've been trying to deal with. I wonder if a lot of the things we're talking about here fall into the category of over-engineering. We've over-engineered our educational system and not really asked why. I've had the privilege of being in Esther's class, and when I go in there, it's simple. It's very simple what Esther is doing. She'll be the first person to admit it.
Right.
And its simplicity is its brilliance. How kids learn, we know how that happens. And Esther's facilitating that. And so I wonder, number one, are we overcomplicating this? And then number two, I wonder if underlying all this overcomplication is something more fundamental. I wonder if, as a country, we've lost our desire. We've lost our ganas. I don't think teachers today are any worse than teachers were 50 or 60 or 70 years ago. So my question is, when we look at foreign countries and we look at people who we're comparing ourselves to, don't they have a greater desire than maybe we do as a society? Is it a cultural issue? That's my question.
Have we lost our get up and go?
Well, I actually think the over-engineering problem is a real problem.
And that's the prescriptive,
I agree
nature.
It is over-engineered.
Yeah. And I think that the over-engineering problem is also a legacy, because the fact that we've over-engineered, in fact, establishes a way of doing business and governance that when you introduce a simple idea, actually it seems as if it's impossible, as if it's bad practice, as if we're not believing in accountability or some other sort of thing. So in a way, the disruptive innovation, which is sometimes the very simple way of doing something that allows a whole set of new consumers.
Well, it has to be done on the margins, Christensen says, but the margins are wide in education because all they teach is math and reading. You know, I mean, that's what they focus on in so many schools. Quick response, then we're going to take a question from the audience.
I just want to say I agree. I think we have over-engineered, but I also think we haven't focused on the right set of elements that need to be addressed. And again, I'm going to push us back to saying that every one of us in this room knows the kind of quality education we want for our own children, nieces or nephews. That is what we have to hold up as the quality of education for every child in this country. And then we have to ask ourselves, what do those kids need to know to be able to do? And how do you get the teachers that are working with them to be able to deliver?
Programs for poor people are poor programs. Here's a question from Oakland. How will the role of teachers change in this new learning environment? And how can students be involved in teacher preparation, teacher training, curriculum development, assuming they should be? That's actually two, yeah.
So I think teachers, I see myself as a facilitator, an enabler. And so my students work with me. I'm not the sage. I don't know it all. As a matter of fact, I don't know half of what they do. And I just wanted to, could we just show that couple slides?
Okay.
This is an example of what my students do.
Put up Esther's work
there's
product.
A newspaper, a website.
Maybe we have to step aside here, guys.
Website that the kids just created, and they're doing everything themselves. And this is a consolidation of all the programs. You can see the names up there: Campanile, Verde, Viking, In Focus, Calliope. So we have 400 kids that are all in this journalism program. And it's not done. They're working on this website, you know, and they've come up with their own ideas, which in some cases we don't agree with. So the next slide, if you could just show that. This is the newspaper that this is the class of 60. And by the way, the school board just approved this new media building for Palo Alto Unified. It's the first in the nation. It's just going to be media arts, and it includes the 500 kids that are involved in this program. But they come up with their own story ideas. They come up with their own layout, their own design. Some of the stuff I would never be interested in. So I'm not really the teacher in the sense that I don't make, I'm kind of like, I'm the facilitator. I give ideas.
Are you the editor as well?
No, are you kidding? I don't.
Well, what's your adult role? Let's sit down again, everybody. Come on back.
What does my adult role?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, can they put in there whatever they want?
No, but I try. First of all, I teach at a beginning course where I teach ethics, and then I teach like what you should be writing about, all the different writing styles. But then they go do it by themselves. The main things I teach, of course, are making sure there's no libel, no obscenity, no inciting to riot. But then they can come up with their own ideas.
Esther, now you're doing this in Palo Alto. Could you do this in East Palo Alto?
I could do this in East Palo Alto. I first started teaching in Richmond, California.
Okay.
So if you know anything about Richmond, you know that they have a few problems with some of the educational systems there. But
So your feeling is students should definitely be involved in the curriculum.
They should
But
be
you're on the
involved.
margins. You're just journalism. You're not anything really important.
I know. So I teach ninth grade English. Thank you.
I'm
I
a
teach
journalist.
ninth
you know.
grade English too. And so I'm trying out this program right now where they're learning the typical ninth grade English curriculum, but they are also, I'm embedding in that curriculum a beginning journalism program. So they're learning how to write for the web. They're learning how to access all the different, or understand all the different types of websites there are out there. And so in between my Of Mice and Men essay, we then went and did a restaurant review. And then after that, we're doing a movie review. And then we're going to be doing a product review. That's right. They get to pick their own product.
So
So basically, I'm letting them do what they want to do at the same time. And they get all excited.
Esther Wojcicki, subversive. But do any of you worry about that? Remember the kid who hadn't read Romeo and Juliet, read it in 15 minutes? Do any of you worry about core learning, about integrity? I was an English teacher. I'm horrified that Romeo and Juliet's a pretty cool play. That kid's not going to experience it. Is that a reason? Is that a cause for concern, Tony?
As we talk about the new literacies, it's hard to believe going forward that it's still not going to be important to engage complex text through reading, to engage in the crafting of complex argument through writing.
So you're putting it back on the teacher for not having created the situation?
Well, but it goes to your question. It goes to your question about, does it worry me? Yes, it worries me, because those skills are central to thinking, and there is a real and especially when we say that some kids don't need to do this, that really worries me.
Let's take a question. Yeah, please identify yourself. I think it's the fourth gentleman. What does that sign say? 5 minutes left? Is that all? Okay. Yes, fourth, yes, you got it. Quick question.
No, you have to push a button.
Carnegie Corporation. We've been working a lot with technology for the last educational technology for the last 25 years, and this is not a new paradigm. It's one that we've visited before, and we obviously from the last 2 days we've seen some pockets of innovation, which are very, very good. But what makes you think? And I think it's important for many of us to hear, who have been in this territory, have some doubts, but want to re-enter this territory. What makes today or this time different than it has been in the last 25 years? What are some of the things that you can say are going to make a difference now that hasn't been there before?
Elyse, and
Yeah.
you're going to go.
I
Quick answer.
I think this is a very different moment. It's one of the reasons I'm so optimistic. I think one is that now our new digital tools, our new media, are at a point where actually they are a product that can be used by virtually anybody. The barriers to technology use are much lower, and in fact, people can now, in a very ubiquitous way, use devices, use tools, use platforms in their personal life. They are
outside of
now
school.
Everywhere.
Schools have competition not from an institution, but from the kids themselves.
And it's not simply because of the competition, but it's also because these same tools have caused our knowledge base in our content areas to be dramatically changed.
It may well be what people said about textbooks. Textbooks may disappear, but text won't disappear. Schools may disappear, but learning will continue. Education. Are you optimistic? Is this time different?
Yeah, I think it is different. So what are the criteria that go into putting technology in schools? That it's reliable, that it's easy to use. You mentioned that, and that it adds value somehow to the educational system. Yeah. So you add those three things together. I think we've got the first two pretty well nailed. I think we need to get the third a little bit better, which is one reason why I was pushing the courseware that otherwise wouldn't be available to students all over the country.
I'm not so optimistic. I don't think schools understand how threatened they are. Like that dinosaur, it's been mortally wounded in the back. The message hasn't gone up the neck all the way to the brain. And so that it's much more serious. Yeah, question in the front, yes, please. Yeah. Identify yourself.
Giselle Huff. I just wanted to add to.
I need a question.
I will give you a question.
Okay.
But the Clayton Christensen's idea that it's not replication, it's commoditization. And I want to go back to, and the question is around what Mike was saying and what we heard yesterday, and the comments that were made earlier this morning about urgency. We haven't got time, okay? I mean, so if we can't...
I don't mean to be rude, but
yes.
I don't have time either. I
All
need
right.
your question.
Okay, so how do we jump over all of this and take care of the kids that Mike was talking about? The ones who need the vocabulary that, you know, brings them up to speed.
How do we jump over? I have a slogan. If we can land a man on the moon, we can teach our 2-year-olds the word astronaut. No? Okay.
That doesn't work.
Doesn't work. All right. That's fine.
You know, John,
I'll keep my day job.
John, this does relate to one thing Jeff Canada said last night. We've got all this focus for a long period of time on trying to improve the high schools, but one of the things he said is that that's really important. But if you really want to open up the potential of every child, help them get a good start early on with a real focus on literacy.
Which was what goes back to what Mike said.
Right, exactly. Uri Treisman has done some studies of kids in taking algebra and solving algebra problems. Finds that 50% of the algebra problems can be traced back to the language. The errors that get made can be traced back to the language in the algebra problem. Kids can do the algebra. They can't understand the language to set the problem up.
So there's the national urgency. We have time for one more question. Yes, sir. You've been very patient.
So it's actually not a question. It's a comment.
Okay.
And my comment is this. We only have an hour and a half or 2 hours left on this panel in particular, but at this conference in general, and in all conferences, I think, we have a substantial propensity to use words like they teachers, they kids, we. So if the we, when you guys say we, it's we older white folk that have a lot of experience and knowledge. And I would just want to encourage us to try to get out of that language because we have 3 million teachers. Not all they do X. Not all students do Y. So I would encourage us to be a lot more specific when we're talking. It helps us.
Oh, thank you very much. That's a very thoughtful comment. Mike, I promised to call on you 4 times. How are you? That's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
You guys have been a terrific audience, and you all have been superb. Thank you. Would you please?